Hello, I'm Christina Berry, and this is what I'm going to be reading from. It's my debut novel up for air. It's about a woman who's not happy in her marriage, so she decides to open it and asks her husband if they can open it, and they do, and it's a bit of an adventure from there. It is a non-conventional romance, and I'm going to start reading from it. Wednesday, October 13th, 2004. Am I happy? How would I know? What is the measure of happiness? Up until yesterday, the last day of my 28th year, I naively thought I was happy, or at least not unhappy. Like happiness was binary, a light switch you flip on or off, light, dark, happy, sad, or like one of those creepy clowns who moves his hand across his face as he shifts his expression from one extreme to the other. Psycho smile, freaky frown. As if anything in the human condition could be so simple. Well, there's death, I guess. Death is pretty simple. You can't get much more binary than that. 1-0, alive, dead. Regardless of what I used to think, my reality is now forever changed. A birthday present I can't return. Here I sit on the dawn of my 29th year, at the end of the front row of pews in this quaint little church, in this quaint little town, tears streaming down my cheeks, wondering how to quantify my happiness. Or rather my unhappiness. It's making me miserable, this little epiphany of mine. No, little is the wrong word. There's nothing little about my revelation. This isn't the idea, an idea illuminated by a single incandescent bulb flickering over my head. This dawning irradiates with the flash burn of a nuclear bomb. I look up, half expecting to see a mushroom cloud filling the chapel with the pulverized debris of my former notions. But there's nothing there. Only a clear view of the honey-toned oak beams that hold up the roof and the vaulted tops of the massive stained glass windows, which flank the parishioners with cheery, colorful mosaics forming various tableaus: Jesus, a lamb, a dove, a star. At my side, Greg glances up too, as if to catch a glimpse of whatever it is that's captured my attention. When he sees nothing special, he returns his attention to the pastor at the front of the church. I sniffle again and blow my nose into the handkerchief Greg's father gave me at the beginning of the service. The wet, snotty sound echoes up to the steeple and bounces against the towering windows, nearly drowning out the voice of Pastor Rick. I glance at the pastor and catch a glimpse of Grandpa Chuck behind him, his face just visible above the edge of the casket. Speaking of death and its binary morbidity, there lies the reason we are all here. Charles Elton Hendricks III is dead. I quickly look away, down at the handkerchief fisted tightly in my lap, smears of black where my mascara has marred the white linen. I can't bear to see him like this. He looks so strange. The mortician has done a good job putting a bit of color in his cheeks to make him look almost alive, just resting. But with his hair combed over and dressed in a light blue suit, he looks like someone else. He looks like the used car salesman version of himself. Grandpa Chuck was a rough and rugged old man whose entire wardrobe consisted of denim overalls and white t-shirts. He had a half-naked woman tattooed on his arm, and if you asked him to, he would make her wiggle while he sang an Elvis tune. He was missing the tips of 2 fingers on his left hand, but could still play a mean guitar. He even played with Bill Monroe a few times. He was a moonshiner back in his youth, a train-hopping hobo for a time, and he spent more than a few nights in jail. He had lived a full, long life, a life of bluster, moxie, and gusto, a life filled with all the best stories. Grandpa Chuck was no used car salesman. Of all Grandpa Chuck's stories, my favorites were the ones about Millie. His eyes would sparkle, and his smile would stretch wide across his wrinkled face as he'd reminisce about the night he first laid eyes on her. There was never any doubt in his mind. Millie was his love, his one and only for the 71 years they spent together. She took a little convincing, but soon she was just as smitten, and their love never wavered. They were still in love 3 days ago when Millie sat beside Grandpa Chuck's hospice bed, squeezing his frail fingers and promising she would see him again soon. With that thought, tears start to well in my eyes again. Shoot, I'm crying again. Sniff. At my left, Greg squeezes my hand and leans closer to whisper in my ear. His tone is soothing yet vexed as he asks if I'm okay. It's a dumb question. Do I look okay? I nearly laugh. Jesus, Who would laugh at a time like this? Funny, asking Jesus dumb rhetorical questions while sitting in a church. And that thought almost makes me giggle even more. I cover my mouth with my fist, swallowing the impulse. Wanting to quell Greg's concern, I try to cry more demurely. But it's impossible. I'm an ugly crier. Always have been. Bawling over skinned knees and playground bullies always cause my face to puff up and my red cheeks to stain with blotches of bright red like a half-ripened tomato. It's never been a pretty sight. Without a mirror to check, I can only imagine what I look like right now, with my neatly pressed black dress, my long hair twisted into a knot at the nape of my neck, my makeup tidy and understated, except for the raccoon bandit mask of smeared mascara and dripping bloodshot eyes. The congregation is singing now, Amazing Grace, but I can't find my voice. I stare down at the pages of the hymnal Greg held on his lap, my vision swimming in tears. I sniff again and blow my nose, then look up at my husband. Greg isn't singing either. Sitting with his head lowered, he stares blankly at the songbook's tablature. He's as handsome as ever, his classic Hollywood looks complemented by the smooth lines of his gray suit, his jaw cleanly shaven, and his honey brown hair combed back. But his eyes, normally a warm whiskey color, are steel gray today. He suppresses a yawn with the back of his hand, and I exhale with relief. That's it. That's all it was. Exhaustion. Of course he's exhausted. When we received the call about his grandfather's stroke, he'd made a trip from Austin to this corner of Appalachia in one night. We'd wanted a chance to say our goodbyes before Grandpa Chuck passed away 3 days later. The last week has taken a toll on us all, emotionally and physically. I reach for Greg's hand and squeeze. He gives me a toothless grin before returning his attention to the songbook. I glance past him to Jake, our best friend, who looks even more dark and intimidating than usual. Decked out in all black, his posture ramrod straight, his hands clasped tightly in his lap, and his long jet black hair plaited into two tight braids that hang down his chest. He sings the hymn lyrics from memory, and despite his imposing physical presence and perpetual scowl, his powerful baritone voice is a welcome, soothing comfort. I listen for a moment before looking back down at the hymnal in Greg's lap, only now noticing that it's open to the wrong song. Outside, Greg, Jake, Greg's brother Matt, and a myriad of Hendrick's cousins carry the cherry coffin to a spot beneath the wide branches of a hickory tree. The hole is already dug, and at the head of it sits a wide granite tombstone emblazoned with Hendricks on the back. On the front, Grandma and Grandpa Hendricks' names and birth dates already etched into the stone. Soon, Grandpa's death date will be added beside a void beneath Grandma Millie's information, a placeholder marking the time until she joins her husband in eternal slumber. The morbid inevitability of it sends a cold shiver through me. I look away, distracting myself with the details of a blue pop-up tent set off to the side, 3 rows of plastic chairs placed for family to sit. But no one is sitting except for Millie. Everyone else seems more interested in stretching their legs as they get in a smoke before the start of the graveyard service. In her black wool dress and wide-brimmed hat, Millie looks tiny, so frail and delicate. For a moment, I think how odd it looks to see her sitting alone. If Grandpa Chuck were here, he would have his lanky arm draped over her shoulders, comforting her sorrow away. Then again, if Grandpa Chuck were here, she would feel no sorrow. I can't stand the thought of her alone, so I join her. Leaving Greg and Jake behind, I make my way up the aisle along the edge of the tent and sit beside her. Millie glances at me, then we both stare at the cherry casket, covered in sprays of fall floral arrangements. After a moment, Millie quietly laments, "This morning, I read an article in the newspaper that he would have found interesting. I wanted to tell him about it, and then I remembered he's not with me anymore." She pauses. "I miss him." Fresh tears prick my eyes. I reach over to squeeze Millie's hand in mine. It's such a small gesture given the wound she's opened to me, but she places her other palm over my fingers and squeezes in kind. I glance at her, and she smiles at me. "Ari, it's your birthday today, isn't it?" Millie asks. I nod, almost embarrassed to admit it. How old are you now? I'm 29. Well, goodness, so young and with so much promise, so much time ahead of you. She leans in as if to tell me a great secret. Don't waste a moment of it, honey. It moves so fast, faster than you realize. Cherish the time you have and the people you love. I force a grin for Millie's sake and try to swallow the lump in my throat. It takes everything in me not to start bawling again. I glance up at Greg, the man I've spent 12 years of my life with, and I try to imagine the next 60. I furrow my brow with concentration as Greg looks my way. He returns my anxious expression, then looks past me, just over my shoulder. I watch him a moment longer before I, too, look past my husband to the valley beyond. Fall leaves fill the landscape with fiery shades of orange, yellow, and red. Despite the cold of the day, the surrounding mountains are ablaze with ardent color, like an inferno stretching down the hillside to the valley below, ready to engulf us all in flames. I shiver. In my old bathrobe, I curl up on the bed to look out the window. As I lazily stare, my eyes drift out of focus until the moving shapes and clouds and wavering colors of leaves blur into an abstraction. Vaguely, I note the sound of the front door closing with a heavy bang. Greg's voice echoes as he calls to me and my parents. He's greeted with only silence. I clear my throat as I answer, as if to answer, but there's no need. Greg comes to find me in my old bedroom. Closing the door behind him, he sits on the edge of the bed and stares down at his shoes for a long moment, alone with his thoughts. The silence between us is unnerving. I speak just to fill the space. My parents went to take a casserole to your grandma. Greg nods but doesn't speak. Doesn't even look at me. I reach my hand over and lay it on his thigh. Greg, I'm sorry about your grandpa. And I'm sorry I was so weepy. I'm not sure what came over me. Greg shrugs, still staring down at the plush carpet at his feet. I watch him, urging him with a silent plea. Say something. Say anything. Please just look at me. The telepathy works. Greg turns and looks down at me. His face is blank, the lines rigid and cold like marble, a beautiful statue. With a tilt of his body, he leans closer to me, bracing his weight on one hand while he uses the other to play with a tendril of my hair, then tucks it behind my ear. Slowly, he leans down and kisses me. It's gentle at first, a delicate brush of his lips over mine, but soon his movements become harder, more urgent. He twists around until he's stretched out beside me, and then on top of me, his weight pressing me deep into the springy old mattress. I grunt as the air whooshes out of my lungs. He moves fast, tugging at the robe belt to try to free me from it, but his maneuvers only tighten the terry cloth robe. What if my parents come home? I can't remember the last time we had sex in my old bedroom, probably before we were married. The idea excites me almost as much as it excited me the first time. On the night of my 18th birthday, when I snuck him through my window and he took my virginity. Well, be quiet, he says with a rough edge to his words. Please, Ari, I need you right now. At my nod, he fumbles with the zipper on his pants and enters me with a sharp thrust. I gasp at the sudden fullness, wince at the pain, but soon my body relaxes. I can't help but come. It's easy like that. I freeze and spasm and bite his neck to muffle my cries. He lets out a groan, then spent, collapses on top of me. Lying beneath my husband on my childhood bed, his weight pressing down on me, I can't help but cry. I'm easy like that too. Greg pushes up onto an elbow, staring down at me in panic, worried he's hurt me in some way. The stricken look on his face saddens me even more. Tears slip from the corners of my eyes as I lean up and gently kiss him. Relieved, he drops to my side and gathers me in his arms, hugging me close to his chest. Whatever dam existed within me washes away, and I am overcome with tears. I sob uncontrollably, sometimes moaning loudly, and other times heaving and shaking with silent convulsions. Greg tenderly strokes my hair and whispers soothing sounds into my ear, patiently letting me cry until I run dry. Then we lie together in silence. I'm about to drift off to sleep when Greg curses. It's your birthday. It's the 30th. It's the 13th. I forgot your birthday. Your grandpa died. You're excused. I didn't even get you flowers. Trying to lighten the mood, I point to the assortment of funeral floral arrangements covering every inch of my old desk. Millie had insisted I take a few flowers with me, then loaded me up with like a pack mule. I have plenty of flowers. Greg barks out a half-hearted laugh. Well, I'm still sorry. I give him a toothless grin before I close my eyes, lay my cheek on his chest, and drift off to sleep, finally drawing this birthday and death day to a close. Saturday, November 13th, 2004. I have never been a sad person, but have I ever truly been a happy person? If I am a happy person, wouldn't I know? But how do you know something like that? What are the signs and symptoms of happiness? These are the cold, clear, cruel thoughts that ricochet through my head, leaving Swiss cheese holes and torn bits of gray matter in their wake. This is the fallout from my little epiphany bomb, dropped that sad day as I stared at the lifeless face of Greg's grandfather. On the dawn of my 29th year, my eyes were opened to the revelation of my own eventual demise. My finite mortality reflected back at me from the grave, and those thoughts were not buried alongside